Good evening. Thank you for joining. Good evening. Share, invite, and tag. Good morning. Good evening to you. God bless you. YouTube and Facebook on tonight. Good evening to you. Good evening, Facebook, YouTube, and Repurpose Room. God bless you. Good evening. Sorry about that. Good evening to you. God bless you for joining. Do us a favor, share, invite, and tag as we go into worship just a little bit. Good evening. Good evening, Facebook. Good evening, Repurpose Room. And good evening to you, YouTube. God bless you. Good evening. Share, invite, and tag, guys. If you're coming back through later or tomorrow, hashtag replay. God bless you. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. God bless you for joining. Share, invite, and tag. Good evening to you, Repurpose Room, Facebook, YouTube. Listen, over there on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Good evening. God bless you. Good evening to you. Good evening, YouTube, Facebook, Repurpose Room. Good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening to you. God bless you. Good evening.
We just want to give you praise tonight. We just want to give you praise. We cannot make it without you, and we cannot make it without your power. Jesus, if it wasn't of your love and your faithfulness to the cross, where would we be? Today we are able to stand and testify that your death was life unto us. Your pain was healing unto our lives. That your tears, oh Lord, they were celebration and joy unto us.
Good evening. God bless you.
We thank you, God, that you are in this place tonight, and we are able to experience your presence. For you are a great God. Yes, you are. You are the substance of all human but you. You're all wise and you're all knowing, all understanding. You can do anything and everything we cannot. You are everything good that we would like to be.
Good evening. God bless you. Continue as you come into the room to share, invite, and tag. YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Good evening. Drop in the chat where you're joining us from. Good evening to you. God bless you. Share, invite, and tag. YouTube, invite people in and hit the subscribe button. Good evening to you. God bless you for joining. I see you in the chat. Montgomery, Alabama, Trustville, Alabaster. God bless you for joining this evening. Continue to hit like, share, invite, and then on YouTube, if you would hit the subscribe button. We thank God for everybody that's here this evening. Listen, can you guys hear us? Are you hearing us okay? Drop it in the chat, just some thumbs up if you're able to hear us okay. God bless you for joining this evening. I see you, Repurpose Room. I see you, Facebook, and I see you, YouTube. Thank you for joining this evening as we come tonight with a very special guest. I'm so excited. Awesome. Thank you, Anita. God bless you. Thank you, Letitia. For those of you that have been journeying with us, it's been a year already, and we're, first quarter down. We're into April. We came into the year strong. The month of January, we came in doing Faith Fridays, and then we jumped into February where we did the 28-day dream devotion, which I'm still getting testimonies about that. If you're subscribed to the Wednesday in the Word, you get the Wednesday in the Word emails that go out every Wednesday. And then here in March, we went back to Faith Fridays. Then we had a Bible study. We had a Bible study in March. And then here back in April, we're doing Journaling the Journey. And also we're doing Faith Fridays. And so I've got a very special guest with me on tonight, Odyssey Langham, and she's going to introduce herself and tell us all about her. But I brought her on tonight because we want to talk about the benefits of journaling. You've seen the testimony we put up on the page and in the groups from V Pratt. There'll be another testimony video that I'll be dropping tomorrow from another tribe keeper about her journey with journaling. I told someone in a coaching session on today where when you hear the word journaling, she said that word just kind of triggered me and was very overwhelming. And I wanted to encourage her, and I want to go ahead at the onset of this to encourage you as well. It's not about the quantity of words, but the quality. Sometimes I just go to my journal and I jot one little thing that I come back to later to maybe unpack or maybe write a little bit more or maybe not. And so I want to encourage you that wherever you are in the journey, first of all, you're not behind. You can catch up. And the journaling prompts that we put in the group and on the pages every day are just to be used at your leisure. You don't have to use them. They're just to help you as a prompt to kind of help you start the flow of writing. And so I brought Honesty on tonight. We've been trying to connect, and I just thank God we've had some life issues going on. Life be lifing, but I'm glad that we were able to get here tonight. So share, invite, and tag. YouTube, share, invite people, and hit that subscribe button. Facebook, share, invite, and tag to all of your friends. If you're coming back later, hashtag replay. But I brought her on tonight to talk about just the benefits of journaling and what journaling looks like. But first, Honesty, look, tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Pastor Michelle. My name is Honesty Langham. I am a licensed clinical mental health therapist, licensed in the state of Alabama and the state of Florida. I am the mom of a very active 3-year-old, getting ready to be 4. Um, I work, our office is in Birmingham. I work with a lot of moms. I work a lot in the perinatal mental health field, but also with a lot of young professionals as well. I guess my caseload is pretty sporadic right now. I work also with a lot of elders as well, navigating various life circumstances, mental health concerns, and just life issues. Yeah.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. I see you chiming in. I see you dropping in the chat. Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining. Listen, share this out to all of your tribe, and all of your friends. We want people to get in on the conversation tonight and just hear the benefits and even debunking some of the myths of journaling. And so, Honesty, could you tell us what sparked your interest, or what drove you to become a counselor, become a therapist? What drove you to that? Was it something in your own personal life? Was it something you knew you always wanted to do, or did life circumstances kind of navigate you that way? How did that happen?
So it was absolutely life circumstances. I was convinced that I was going to be an attorney. That was my thing. That is what I was going to do. And I
Look at God.
right, exactly. It was definitely a God thing. I briefly started down that path and realized really quickly that that wasn't it, but I didn't know what was it. And so I kind of took an easy route. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to major in sociology. I like people. We're going to figure out where that takes me. And I had no
Okay.
idea what I was getting ready to do with it, but I knew I was going to get the degree and I was going to finish it. In the midst of all of that, life, like you said earlier, started lifing.
Yes.
And I started having to deal with a lot of things that had took place in my childhood. I started going through really bad anxiety, really bad depression, even to the point where I was suicidal. And it was
Yeah.
in that moment that one, God sent help for sure in that moment in physical form. My roommate walked in the moment where I was at my lowest, and she had the exact words that changed the entire trajectory of my thinking and my being in that moment. But even beyond that, I was introduced to therapy for myself, and I started my own therapy process. And I was literally sitting in the therapy room when God told me that I was going to be a therapist. And I started laughing out loud, and my therapist probably wanted to admit me to a hospital because she couldn't hear what I heard. Um, but in that moment, God said, "You're going to be a therapist." And I was like, yeah, no way. I'm too dysfunctional, too messed up, trying to figure it out for myself.
Okay.
And God continued to speak, and I continued to run, and he continued to speak, and I continued to run. And I was fighting it for the longest until eventually, again, in the therapy room with the same therapist, I was like, you know what, God, just do whatever you're going to do.
Wow.
And so that started my journey, and I was journaling through that whole process. That therapist is actually who introduced me to journaling in a more clinical way. I had been a writer. I love to write. I used to write poetry, spoken word. So I was always a writer, but she introduced me to journaling in a clinical way.
Wow.
And so I was journaling throughout that entire process, and I still have those journals to remind myself of that time. And that's kind of where I started.
Okay. So with you saying that, is journaling something that you recommend to your clients? And is there steps to how you introduce it to them, or are there steps to how you instruct them to kind of write or what to do when they're journaling?
Yeah, so journaling looks different for everyone. It's
Correct.
absolutely something that I introduce to my clients because the research supports it. So
Mhm.
one thing, you kind of hear the saying in other areas of life where it's like better out than in, or it applies the same when you think about your emotions and your thoughts and the things that you're
Okay.
going through and dealing with in life. It's better out than in. And
Yeah.
sometimes that looks like having to create a space to let it out. And so
Yeah.
journaling can fill in that gap. For one, people are always not available. For one, people have their own lives doing their own thing. So there's not always someone who's readily available and who can talk to you and help you
Right.
process things. But even aside from that, everybody don't need to know everything. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it's important, especially if it's things that God is communicating to you that He has not
Yeah.
yet released you
Yeah.
to share with other people. Sometimes you need that more intimate personal space between you and between God to really get out and process the things. I think of journaling as a way to think about what you're thinking about. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it's as simple as what is on my mind right now. And that's a good starting place. It doesn't have to be super strategic, although it can be.
Hmm.
It can be as simple as what was I thinking throughout the day? What consumed my thoughts?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be anything fancy, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated. The research
Right.
shows us, I think there's several research studies that have showed the effectiveness of journaling. And in all of that research, I think people who benefited the most journaled at least 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And that didn't even have to look like every day. I read a study just recently that said that the participants in the particular study were asked to journal twice a week,
Hmm.
or either in increments of 10, 15, or 20-minute increments. They got to
Yeah.
choose what they did, but they were asked specifically to talk about past trauma. And so the goal or the purpose of that particular research was to say, is journaling effective for helping to heal trauma? And so what
Wow.
they found at the end of the research project is that those who actually completed the assignment significantly, I think it was about an 80% difference,
Wow.
significantly improved in their healing process and were 80% farther along than those who did not complete the process. And so I
Wait, now
absolutely recommend it.
those numbers are amazing. 80% spike in effectiveness and moving forward
Mhm.
or moving through your journey, your trauma or whatever you're
Your
working
healing,
through
right, for sure.
through journaling. And you said something very key. Just like I told one of my clients today about the journaling process, and she said when I heard the word journaling, it triggered me and I just felt overwhelmed that I've got to do all this extravagant writing and pages and pages. And I expressed to her as I was talking to you prior to us coming on, I said, no, there are times that I don't journal like a whole lot. I
Mhm.
may just jot. I don't journal all the time. I jot, but it's a matter of me, like you said, getting thoughts out of my head, and I'd call it a brain dump, dumping everything on the page, and even maybe coming back to it later, or
Mhm.
maybe just kind of unpacking it later. Or, like you said, it's just something that God wants me to reference or sit with
Mhm.
until He unpacks it and unfolds it in my life. And so, that is, but to hear that people that really consistently journaled, whether it was every day or every few days, with to see that there was an 80% growth in how they process through their journey.
Mhm.
um, Here's the thing I really want us to touch on tonight, because we're not going to be with the tribe long, but I really want us to lean into this part on tonight.
Yeah.
We've heard you talk about the benefits of journaling, and on this journaling journey, I've had so many people inbox me, and I've gotten cards in the mail. One lady said, she said, I entered into this with skepticism,
Mhm.
but it has done so many great things for me just in a few days.
Yeah.
And I'm a first time journaler. And then some people are like V's testimony yesterday, where it was like, okay, these prompts are messing with me because I thought I was okay and I thought I knew. And you ask something as simple as, what is your dream? Or today's one was a little bit more fun and light, where it was like, what is your hobby? Yesterday's one lady inboxed me and she was like, I'm just blown away. I'm stuck because I didn't realize, I think the question was, what do you love about your body, or and why? And she was like, why can't I say something good about myself on this page?
Yeah.
In this journal? And I said, okay, call me. Let's talk through this. Let's process this. And so I did not know. I'm thinking, when I started this and the Lord prompted me to do it, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be fun. Little did I know it was going to really unpack and help people process through things. It's got people talking, the conversations. And so it was, I think, last week where we wrote the letter of release. And I think I even put in the prompt that the letter may even need to be written to yourself. Who do you need to release? Who has hurt you? What has happened that you may need to write this person a letter? And this is one of the things that I use in my coaching sessions with certain clients. And I think I talked to you about this, where I said, well, listen, first of all, let's just be okay with the fact that you're not going to show this to anybody. As long, just like your journal, it's private. You don't have to write it cute. It don't have to be color coded. You can just jot and scribble and nobody's going to see it. And this letter was the same way. And I remember telling a client, I said, listen, this letter that you're getting ready to write to your mother and your father, who are still living, who caused you a lot of trauma, who have not acknowledged it or don't see it the way that you see it. I want you to just write it to release them. Write what you're feeling, because they've shown you that when you sit with them, they don't necessarily want to receive what you're saying, or they don't want to hear it. So at least when you sit down to write, nobody's interrupting you, or nobody's saying, well, no, that's not how it is, or you shouldn't feel that way. When you sit to write, you can just write. And against better judgment, she shared these letters, and it did, and again, it was against, recommendation, but she just felt inclined. And I said, well, I'm praying for you. And upon sharing this letter, again, it wasn't received, and it wasn't, she didn't get the response she wanted, right? That she wanted. So help us unpack a letter of release. That's just what the Lord gave me to call it. I don't know what you call it in your field. The letter of release, where we're addressing trauma, addressing people that hurt us. Sometimes these letters are written to people who are deceased and no longer here. Sometimes you've got to write a letter to yourself because, hey, I made the choices. This was all on me. Let me write a letter of release to myself, because sometimes the hardest person to forgive is the one in the mirror. So talk about that on tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So a letter of release is one language that we often use in terms of writing those letters. Sometimes we just simply call it a letter. Whatever works. One of the things that it's important to notice, sometimes the letter of release might be to your younger self. What needs, or what voids, or what hurts did your younger self experience that your adult self can now speak to? What would you have told the person who was hurt or abused at 6 years old? What would you have told the person who at 13 years old and didn't have a full understanding of life, but thought you were grown, so you're out making decisions that you shouldn't have been making as a child? What would you now tell that person? Sometimes that's what a letter of release looks like. And a letter of release is simply an opportunity for you to express or get out the things of your heart, those intricate details that only you know, because you sit with them every day. Those things that at the end of the day, when you turn off work and you come home for the day and you put the kids to bed and you are done with the conversations and done dealing with the outside world, it's those things that you have to look yourself in the mirror at every night and sit with and rest with. Sometimes it does look like it's being towards other people who have hurt you that you haven't quite released yet. A letter of release is very similar to the idea of forgiveness. We have to recognize that it's for us.
Yeah.
I released you because you can no longer go where I'm going, or I released you because in order for me to get to my next level and where God is calling me to and where I have to go, I have to make sure that I've healed the things of my past. And so it's not always for the person. Now, there are some circumstances where it might be appropriate to share the letter only after proper preparation, like your client who had the experience that was not necessarily what was desirable or what was wanted. That is absolutely a possible outcome of it, because we can only control ourselves, and we can't ever dictate how someone is going to respond or how they are going to take what we have to say. It doesn't invalidate.
Can I give this disclaimer, because I don't want people to think that I was trying to counsel her in that regard. The coaching session was about something else, and even her counselor, her therapist, who's giving her therapy in another area, the coaching that I was giving was about business and other personal things. The therapist even said to her, kind of like what you said, that listen, we've got to make sure that you're prepared for the outcome, and against better judgment, and against her therapist's recommendation of the process that she should have gone through prior to sharing this. It didn't, like I said, it didn't go the way that sometimes we have a fantasy in our mind of how things will go if we write our words out and express our feelings. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Yeah, that absolutely important to note. Because again, we can't control how anyone receives anything. That doesn't invalidate our experience. It doesn't invalidate our truth, and it doesn't take away from what we feel. It just means that they're not in a place to receive it, and that's okay, because they get to navigate their own journey as well. And we have to come to a place of acceptance that this is where I am, and I'm ready to move forward. It doesn't mean that everyone else is ready to move forward either.
Right.
And so one of the things that we encourage is writing the letter. Just write it. Start with whatever is on your mind. Doesn't have to be, again, overly complicated. Sometimes it doesn't even look like writing. You were saying earlier how you kind of just jot things down. And I was like, let me find an example. So I pulled up one of my mini journals, and I just have this example of where I typed it out because I was probably working or in between a session and stuff was coming to me and I couldn't physically grab the journal to write it. So I was typing it. And then at the end of the day, I printed it out and I glued it to my journal. It's the same thing. You get it out, and it doesn't have to look a certain way, or there's no standard for journaling. It's just getting the thoughts out, getting the emotions out. So sometimes you'll write the letter and you'll recognize, like, that's what I needed. I just needed to get it out, and that was enough. But for some people, it's not enough. Some people write it and then they're like, okay, what do I do with this? And they need to go a step further. And so in those instances, we encourage a visual effect. So the research shows us that if I can associate something physical with the release, then I'm more likely to fully release it and let it go and be able to heal from it. So sometimes that looks like writing it on a piece of paper, reading what you've written, and then telling yourself, okay, at this point, this can no longer go with me. I'm now going to release it. Some clients find it beneficial to ball it up and throw it in the trash as symbolism of, I'm letting this go. I'm done with it. After this day, it can no longer go with me. Some people need to go even a step further than that. I've seen clients find effectiveness in burning the letter, where they see the flame where it's burned, it's gone. I can't pull it back up because it's impossible to now. It's gone. It's ashes. And so that's helpful. That was helpful for me. In some of the letters that I've written, even in my journey and in my experience, where I knew if I shared this letter, it would not be well received. But it has even allowed me to get to a place where I have been able to reconcile some of those relationships because I healed. And because that healing took place, it allowed me to see people for who they are. And it allowed me to recognize that you handled me according to your own experience and your own traumas and the things that you have not resolved. That's no implication on me. That doesn't mean that I did anything wrong. That doesn't mean that I even had any control. That also does not make you right. But now that I understand that you did this from a place of hurt, I can come to terms within myself and accept that it is what it is. I learned from it. It helped me to heal. And now I can move forward.
Awesome. That is so powerful. So drop in the chat or drop in the chat in the comments. For those of you that wrote your letter of release, how did it make you feel? Did it help? How many of you know that there's somebody that there's still, something that within you that's holding you back as it pertains to an incident that maybe happened, like she said, with your younger self or with a family member or with a superior, maybe a coworker or somebody that you thought would handle you a certain way or someone you trusted. It didn't end well, and maybe you just need to write a letter of release, because I've heard people say, I don't know how to forgive. And sometimes it's just the act of writing how you feel. And like, again, no filter. Nobody's looking at this. You can say whatever you need to say on this paper to get it out. And, so how many of you, maybe you need to do that? Maybe you need to write a letter of release, so that you can move forward. How many people, Honesty, have you found that when they do this exercise, realize that they're stuck in a moment in time, and when they face it, you see them progressively move forward?
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Or maybe you've experienced it in your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. Journaling has definitely called my attention because the idea is to become more self-aware. As I journal, I can pay attention to my thought patterns. I can pay
Yes.
attention to what I'm feeling. Are there any patterns? Is there any consistency? Am I all over the place? What am I doing on a day-to-day basis that may be triggering these thoughts? So it's a space to evaluate yourself.
Yeah.
And so I have, especially with clients who are working on deep childhood trauma things, is where I use it quite a bit. I've never had anyone tell me it didn't work. I'll say that.
Wow.
I've always had clients come back and say, you know what, I did. I started the process, I did it, but this is where I got stuck. And a lot of times they don't know what to do with that. Like, when I get stuck, what do I do with it? Sometimes it's as simple as, when you got stuck, what was the next sentence or what was the next phrase that you were afraid to write, that you didn't allow yourself to write? Let's start there. Because a lot of times it's that you're not stuck, is that if you go further, you don't know what to do with what that looks like. And so sometimes it simply looks like just needing to go ahead and keep writing. Sometimes it's that you really are stuck and you're like, okay, I figured out that I'm stuck here. I need to unpack this more. And that might be an opportunity to further process, either in therapy or with a coach or with someone who you trust, where you're like, okay, this is where I got stuck. This is what I'm dealing with. I don't know how to heal this. And that's where you may need to take it a step further and talk more through it. So again, it varies. It depends on the person and the topic. Again, sometimes the journaling is enough. A lot of times it is. But sometimes you do need to go a step further.
Right. How even with some of my clients and writing, they have almost likened this writing process to a grieving process, or grieving something that they didn't realize they needed to grieve. We know the process. Some of us know the 5 to 7 steps or process of the grieving process. And so how does this look like sometimes grieving? Because sometimes one of the tribe keepers, she said, this writing thing has brought up a lot of feelings that I didn't realize I was suppressing or had not processed through. So how does that sometimes look like grieving, or like you said, facing feelings that we buffer through overwork or throwing ourselves into other people's stuff just to get away from mine, or being very busy but not productive? How does that look?
Yeah. So when you think about grief and just the natural progression of grief, again, that phrase is better out than in. You have to allow yourself to feel it. The problem is, like you said, we do suppress it. We keep going. We tell ourselves, I got to keep busy. I can't allow myself to sit with it. I have to distract myself with something. But the problem is that as we distract ourselves with all of the things and we suppress the emotions and we suppress what we fill up this tank. So imagine a big tank and it continues to fill and fill and fill, and eventually it's got to explode. It's got to go somewhere. It's going to overflow something. But because we're filling up that tank with all of these negative emotions, the
Yeah.
sadness, the sorrow, the hurt, the pain, the abuse, all of the things that are negative, whether it's good or bad that you're filling your tank with, eventually it's going to overflow. And if you
Wow.
overflow with the negative, then where are you overflowing to? So now, because I've suppressed all of these feelings and they're building up in this tank, so now I'm taking it out on my children, or I'm taking it out on my relationships, or I'm taking it out at work because I don't know what else to do with it because I haven't properly released it. So when we think about the grieving process and journaling, we have to consider that journaling can be a part of that process and a healthy means of release during that process. And sometimes we'll journal and we realize, like, I'm grieving this. For me, one of the big things that I experienced after I had my daughter, she was probably 1 at the time, and I realized that I was grieving who I was prior to becoming a mom. And that was hard for me because who am I now when my entire being revolves around this kid that was unplanned, that I love with every fiber of my being. But let's be honest, an unplanned pregnancy at a time when I was hyper fixated on my career and doing things and becoming. And so I had to rediscover who I was. Who am I now on the other side of this experience? How can I be my best self for me so that I can make sure that I'm my best self for her? And so I had to grieve that and recognize that it wasn't possible for me to go back to no longer being a mom. And so who am I now and what can I do with it now so that I can be happy and healthy and whole and all of the things that are required, not only for me individually, but so that I can be my best for her. And so sometimes in the process of journaling, you do discover that you are grieving, and that's okay. Allow the process to unfold.
Right. Why is it, do you think, that we're so afraid to feel and express emotions?
Because we're taught not to. We're taught to be strong. We're taught to be resilient. We're taught to put on our big girl pants and just keep going, right? We're taught that if we show emotion or that if we allow that emotion to come out, that we're weak. We're taught that we are supposed to just be and just go.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, when we consider our history, especially as people of color, is rooted way beyond us. We deal with things present day that didn't even start with us, right? We're carrying the traumas and the anxieties of our ancestors and our parents and all of those generations before us. And so we deal with that present day, and we're taught to, you need to wipe your tears and keep moving.
Yeah.
But crying is a natural sign that your body is biologically doing what it's supposed to do. And so to tell me that I need to not is going against who I was created to be.
Yeah.
When God created Eve, you have to think about the very beginning. When God created Eve, he created because he recognized that there was something about Adam that was not finished. Adam needed something else, right? And women are created to be more nurturing. I say all the time, we were wired to feel, but we're not wired to allow our emotions to control us. There's a difference. And so as we journal, we recognize those emotions, whether healthy or unhealthy, and then we're able to align them according to the word of God, so that our everyday being and our behaviors on an everyday basis, it aligns with what God says that we are.
Right. I told my client today, and it's something that I tell my clients, feelings are not wrong. Feelings, like you just said, it's a natural part of who we are. I liken it to feelings are indicators. They're the light on the dashboard to let you know that there's something going on under the hood. Feelings are indicators, but they do not have to be dictators.
Absolutely.
They do not have to dictate your life. You do not have to allow them to talk about the self-sabotage that goes along with not facing your feelings, not getting your feelings out, whether it's through journaling, a letter, or therapy. What does self-sabotage look like?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can, I'd like to use the example. You said you had the client who was struggling with finding something good to say about her body image. If I can use that as an example, I think it's perfect to kind of fit the self-sabotage narrative and take it down that road. So imagine it's me. Imagine I am the person and I'm having a really difficult time finding something positive to say about my appearance or my image. So with that, what I do is, because I can't find anything good to say, my brain tells me that there's all these negatives. So, I don't like my hair today, or I don't like my eyes, or my nose is too big, or I'm too heavy. I need to lose weight or whatever it is, right? And
Right.
so self-consciously, I carry that with me on a day-to-day. And so now I'm interacting people, but I'm not my confident self because I can't be confident if I can't even find one positive thing to say about myself. And so
Right.
even though I may not directly recognize it, I'm now navigating people in a way that makes me seem very passive. It makes me feel, or makes other people think that they can take advantage of me, because I operate from a place where people can see that I'm insecure.
Wow.
And it's more internal than anything else, and a lot of it is subconscious, where you don't recognize that you're doing it. And so as we continue to again build up those negative emotions and suppress and not journal, not let it out somewhere, eventually it's going to come out. So sometimes, in a very extreme example, let's say that continues, your client continues down that path of suppressing, not finding anything positive to say, and never heals that area of her life. What could potentially happen is that now I'm navigating and I'm approaching relationships that way. Let's say this partner is unmarried. This partner may approach dating from a very insecure manner. So now I'm accepting everything, allowing everything, tolerating everything, putting up with everything because I don't love myself and value myself. Now it's coming out everywhere else.
Wow. Wow. Or let's talk about the other end of the spectrum where, because we don't deal with our feelings, whatever that looks like, or because we've made one, I say wrong, or one decision that wasn't beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about how we can block or close ourselves off because now I don't trust myself to make good decisions, so I won't make any. I won't make any decisions in relationships. I don't want to move forward. I was burned here, so I won't go near the fire again.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like in journaling and being very honest about how that made me feel so that people can move forward? I see so many people, and I know it's not intentional to not move forward, but so many people don't realize they're stuck in time because of one thing. And because they've never really dealt with it or written about it, they don't trust themselves to navigate, so they don't move at all. How would journaling or therapy help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. One, you have to identify what the thing is. And so that starts with going back as far as you can remember. When was I my best self? When was I my happiest self? If you can identify a time when you were your best self or when you were your happiest self, I always, one thing that I often ask clients who struggle in that area is, tell me your earliest memory. What is the thing that you remember, whether good or bad, as young as you can think back? Start there, because the goal of journaling is to start somewhere. And as you start over time, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And so for individuals who are stuck at a particular place, you have to, one, identify that place. Where did I get stuck? Where did I make that bad decision, or did I make a wrong turn and now I don't trust myself going forward? But then you also have to normalize experiences. We all make bad decisions. We've all done something that we're not, proud of. And that's why I love spaces like this, where you have the community and you can see, okay, I'm not the only one going through it. I'm not the only one who's had this experience, because it helps you to feel like, okay, if they can get through it, I can get through it too. And so that's why it's so important to share your testimony and to share in spaces like this, where you can not only release it for yourself, but encourage other people to do so as well. And then once you've identified the place, and then you recognize, okay, this is where I got stuck. This is where I don't trust myself. Come up with a plan. So what does it look like for me to heal this? Where can I start making small decisions that may not be as big of scale as the one I made before, but that will help me to build trust with myself? It's no different than building trust with anyone. You get to know the person. You get to know the person's patterns, even yourself. You get to know yourself. You get to know your patterns. You get to know, like, okay, when I'm under this type of pressure, I kind of fold. When I'm under this type of pressure, I don't do too well. Maybe I need to seek out a coach or a therapist for this particular matter, because I just keep dropping the ball in this particular area. But I do really good in this area. So I see that this is a strength, right? And so I can build upon my strengths in this area and let can apply some of these principles to the areas where I'm not so good or where I need some improvement or some growth. And so after you identify what it is that's causing you to be blocked, and then you kind of start to work through a plan of recognizing patterns and coming out of it, then implementation. In the therapy world, we call it exposure therapy. Let's start making some decisions and just seeing. A lot of times I ask my clients, what's the worst that can happen? And if I can get through the worst, then
Wow.
chances are I should probably go take that risk and see what happens, right?
Right. Awesome, awesome, awesome. As we get ready to close, what are some things that you would like to share with the tribe about therapy and putting pen to paper?
Yeah. Therapy and putting pen to paper. Putting pen to paper can be therapeutic in itself. A lot of what you do in the therapy room is unpack and process and recognize patterns and recognize thoughts. Sometimes, again, for individuals, the pen and paper is enough. Sometimes you can write it down, work through it, process it, talk about it with your inner self, and be okay. Sometimes you do it and you do need that extra step, and you're like, okay, I've identified these problems, but I just do not know how to get over that hurdle. I do not know how to heal them. And that might be a good time to reach out to a coach or a therapist or someone who can help you in whatever area that is. Sometimes you start a journaling process and you recognize patterns that might be diagnosable. So sometimes you may recognize, like, I'm pretty anxious. Now that I'm journaling, I recognize that I have these patterns that I don't know if this is normal. Like, I don't know if this is within normal range. And sometimes that might require you speaking with a therapist or another mental health professional and going through an evaluation to see if there's anything clinical there. It could be that you're having a hard time getting through whatever it is because there is something clinical there and you need clinical help with it. But other times, again, the journaling could simply be enough.
Awesome, awesome. You've heard me reference this often on lives or even in conversation, how I've realized in talking with people and even in interacting with people, how the past few years, especially with COVID in 2020 and all of that, with people being boxed in, coming face to face with themselves, a lot of people even being alone and being alone with their thoughts and nowhere to escape. Again, no buffers, no busyness to help me, to keep me from facing me. Have you seen a spike or an increase since COVID with people reaching out for therapy?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure every therapist would agree with me that the phone won't stop ringing because of the isolation, because of just when we were locked down, you didn't have anything else to do but sit with what was going on. But also the other side of that is that kind of where the world has shifted and how the world has navigated, is that now I actually have time to deal with this stuff because I'm not out and about as much as I was, or I'm not, where I may have wanted to do it all along and just couldn't find the time to do it. Now I have that space. So I think we're kind of seeing a mix between people recognizing, like, okay, this lockdown did a number on me. And now that I'm not so busy, I really do have some things I need to work on. But then the flip side of that is that I knew I needed to do this work. Now I have an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Honesty, thank you so much for being with us on tonight and sharing with us. Tell people how they can, I put it in the flyer. All of your contact information or your email address was sent out with the Wednesday in the Word email this morning. But drop it on the screen or let people know how they can get in touch with you. Maybe even if you guys are not a good fit, that maybe you can even help direct them to someone that can help them. The key is to get people the help that they need. I'm grateful that this journaling journey has really helped people. It has started a conversation. It's caused people, one individual said, this made me pick my therapy sessions back up with my therapist because I thought I was okay, or I thought I didn't need her. And now I realize I need to start going back regularly. And so let people know how they can get in touch with you and contact you for even further information.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to reach us is you can send a text message to 205-528 8162. Or you can call that number, but the easiest way is to send a text message and we can shoot you over some information. Or you can visit our website. It is www.okaawellness.com. Again, that's okaawellness.com. I don't see an option. I was going to try to put it in the chat, but I don't see an option to let me do it. But I'll come back. What I'll do is I'll come back after we end the live and I'll put it as a comment in the chat so that people can access it.
I'm seeing some conversation in the chat. I'm also seeing with Audrey Green, who's in New York. She says, what about people like myself? I worked through out of the pandemic. It took a toll on my mental state. I think I'm saying that correctly. If you could talk, speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing a lot of people who had to continue working, whether they were healthcare professionals, first responders, or in other fields that required them to keep working. We're seeing just as many of them in the therapeutic space as well, where it did take a toll, whether you were having to be present for individuals dealing with COVID or some other form, or I think that comment said Birmingham Police Department. Even that we're seeing a lot of police officers in the therapeutic space. Because of the toll that the pandemic had, you saw a lot of different things. You not only saw direct results of the pandemic, but also as a indirect kind of result of being locked down for so long. We see an increase in domestic violence from having to be in the same house. We saw a lot of that and still seeing a lot of that. We saw a lot more child abuse going on during that time. And a lot of increased anxiety as it relates to navigating back. You said that they're a nurse. Absolutely. I see a lot of nurses who are dealing with like kind of, you think of long COVID in terms of like health problems, long COVID, but I see it from a mental health standpoint where they're dealing with the lasting effects of things that they experienced and that they saw while providing care for individuals dealing with COVID. So we're absolutely seeing that. I encourage you that if it has taken a toll on you to seek help. It's okay to seek it, and it's okay to enter a space that is held specifically for you by a therapist who is going to provide you with individualized treatment and care to fit your specific needs.
Absolutely. Lastly, and we're getting ready to close, talk about the fact that therapists, coaches, leaders, people that consider the strong ones, how we need therapy as well.
Absolutely. I see mine weekly. Absolutely. I make sure that I carve out a space to see my therapist weekly, and I have no problem at all telling people, you know what, the therapists need therapy, so let me just step away. Because I need a place, one, that holds me accountable to make sure that I'm well. If I'm working every day to take care of my child and make sure that I am providing the best and quality care for other people, I have to make sure that I have a space to release. And so it is equally important for mental health professionals and leaders of any sort, coaches, anyone who is in an active role of helping people on a day-to-day basis, that they have a space where they can release and where they can be refilled, so that as they pour out, they are continuously filling back up in a healthy way, not suppressed feelings fill up the healthy stuff.
Absolutely. Honesty, again, thank you so much. Listen, tribe, thank you for those of you that have joined tonight. In the Repurpose Room, Facebook and YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're coming back through later, go and tell everybody about this great conversation on tonight, about how journaling sparked this conversation and the benefits of journaling, the benefits of writing the letter of release, seeing a therapist, connecting with someone where you're able to really remove those blocks and work through and process through things so that you can live your best life and be your best self. Thank you again, Odyssey, so much for being here. Again, if you want to reach her, you can text her at 205-528-8162. You can text that number 205-528-8162 and connect with her. And if she is not able to get you what you need, she can help direct you to where you can get your healing and your wholeness. Listen, thank you, tribe, so much for joining us this evening for this pop-up live. We'll be back here again on Friday morning for Faith Fridays. Come on, drop it in the chat. Show some love for Odyssey. Absolutely love her and baby girl. So glad that we were able to connect this way and to get the tribe some helpful hints. Stay tuned for tomorrow morning as we put up another journal prompt, but also drop another testimony video of someone who is journaling through the journey. We absolutely love you guys. Odyssey, mwah. Thank you so much. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Love you. Bye.